The first 2 episodes of WandaVision dropped last Friday, and they've already prompted a lot of fan theories amongst the Marvel faithful. There is one that is gaining particular traction though, mainly because it would have far-reaching consequences for the rest of the MCU, but also because there may actually be a lot of weight to it than was once originally thought. I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and here's why Mephisto might be MCU Phase 4's main villain. Oh, and spoilers ahead for the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, that should kind of go without saying. Now, this particular theory stems from the second episode when Agnes, Catherine Hahn, introduces Wanda, played by Elizabeth Olsen, to Dottie, the proverbial cul-de-sac queen who's at the center of Westview's social circle. Dottie mentions during this conversation that the devil is in the details or discussing things with the local committee, before Agnes interjects and says that's not all he's in. While this could be more patented snark from Han's character, some have taken this as a tacit indication that the figure pulling the strings behind the scenes and keeping Wanda trapped in this classic slice of Americana could in fact be Marvel's own version of the devil, Mephisto. Now, Mephisto, for those who don't know, is one of the most powerful villains in the Marvel universe, and he has a history with Wanda Maximoff in the comics. More commonly associated with Ghost Rider than any other Marvel hero, being the man responsible for turning Johnny Blaze into the flaming spirit of vengeance, the character rules over hell and has had run-ins with Thanos, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man, although Spidey fans would probably want you to forget the last one ever happened because, yikes. Either way, I'm putting it to all of you today that Mephisto is the ideal candidate to take a leading role in MCU Phase 4, with WandaVision only being just the beginning. So, as previously mentioned, Mephisto is better known for his relationship with Ghost Rider than any other Marvel character, because he's the man who damned Johnny Blaze's soul to hell and forced the spirit Zarathos to do his bidding for an eternity, which led to Blaze bonding with Zarathos and becoming the famous spirit of vengeance who's addicted to jelly beans, at least if you watch the Nicolas Cage version. That said, to call Mephisto just a straight-up Ghost Rider villain would be to downplay his influence in a great many ways. The ruler of Marvel's Netherworld has interfered with heroes and villains alike in the past, more recently making a nuisance of himself to Doctor Strange and Jane Foster's Valkyrie in her very own comic. But more important and relevant in 2021 is the demon's connection to Scarlet Witch. So in the comics, Wanda uses Mephisto's soul to give birth to twins, who would later grow up to become the heroes Speed and Wiccan. However, Mephisto being Mephisto, and that's somewhere in between Futurama's Robot Devil and Tim Curry's Lord of Darkness from Legend for anyone who's wondering, he reabsorbs his soul and by proxy sorta kills Wanda's children. She's been through a lot. And it would take years for Wanda's children to return, reincarnated with different families, by which point Agatha Harkness, who many believe to be Agnes's alter ego in WandaVision, cast a memory loss spell on Wanda to deal with the trauma. That comic's connection could prove vital to WandaVision's story, although it doesn't exactly clear up Mephisto's potential motivations here if he is involved. Agatha's own status as a mentor to Wanda also makes her role in WandaVision, if she is Agnes, difficult to place too. Is she creating an illusion to protect Wanda, similar to how she wiped away her knowledge of the children in the comics, or is she aiding Mephisto in a bid to control them? The familiar chants of "for the children" in the second episode, as well as Agnes reminding Wanda about school admissions, definitely makes it seem as if she's manipulating her into creating the twins, although for what purpose remains unclear. As we all know, Wanda still retains full control over the world she's created, but it's clear that there are other powerful forces at play. Either way, Wanda's big role in the next Doctor Strange film is a big giveaway that this is only the beginning. Although Nightmare is heavily rumored to be the villain of that picture, and Sword's presence in WandaVision hints at a potential alien presence lurking in the wings, Mephisto should be considered a strong candidate for that film too. But let's take a moment to look to the future for just 1 second, because there is also evidence from Marvel's future slate of films that potentially points towards Mephisto being a unifying arc across different projects. WandaVision may be weaving an elaborate mystery, but the wider overarching conundrum MCU fans have been trying to decipher for the last couple of months relates to 2 of the upcoming Phase 4 films, Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Both are confirmed to feature the multiverse in one form or another, and both also boast a through line back to WandaVision, which has only added to the idea that Mephisto will have a big part to play going forward. Elizabeth Coulson will reprise her role as Scarlet Witch in the next Doctor Strange film, and the Sorcerer Supreme will also be taking on a key role in the third MCU Spider-Man, which will unite Tom Holland's Peter Parker with Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's, as well as the Wallcrawler's respective villains, on account of some presumed multiverse shenanigans. One thing that is worth pointing out, though, is that in everyone's excitement regarding Maguire's Spidey returning, as well as Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, which is rather special, we seem to have forgotten the main fallout from Spider-Man Far From Home, where Quentin Beck revealed Spidey's secret identity to the world. Similar events played out in the comics, and it led to one of the most infamous events in Marvel history. One More Day is a fairly notorious comic, mainly because it's absolutely terrible, but it has been theorized that Marvel could be about to adapt elements of that storyline in Spider-Man 3, by having Peter make a deal with Mephisto to wipe the public's knowledge of his identity. In the comics, Peter drove his bargain with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May's life, but the public also lost its knowledge of his identity after Civil War. The cost was his marriage with Mary Jane, which had been in Marvel's sights for some time beforehand. Either way, it's widely considered to have set Spidey's development back by a good number of years, if not decades. It isn't exactly loved by any stretch of the imagination. The Peter of the MCU, by contrast, does not have a marriage on the line, but he does have a relationship with Michelle and plenty of other attachments Mephisto could use to his advantage, which also applies to the other live-action Peter Parkers set to appear in that film. It would also provide Marvel with a way of telling more traditional Spidey stories going forward, with Peter's secret identity still intact, and with J. Jonah Jameson around, played by J.K. Simmons, and New York City as the main setting. Yeah, I know, it's all extremely nebulous and hypothetical at this stage, but you have to think that Marvel have linked these three projects together for a specific reason. Okay, so now that we've talked about Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and the connections those two projects have with WandaVision, it's time to theorize about Mephisto's wider role that he could have in the MCU were he to be introduced. The character may have historically been overpowered by Thanos in the comics, but that doesn't mean he's not worthy of assuming the Mad Titan's mantle when it comes to the MCU in terms of him being an overarching villain. In fact, in many ways, he's kind of the ideal candidate, not just in terms of power levels or threat, but because he provides the perfect bridge between two genres the MCU looks set to spotlight over the coming phases. Mephisto is mainly a supernatural character, yes, but he's also had brushes with cosmic Marvel on plenty of other occasions. With Moon Knight and Blade set to come to the MCU in the next couple of years, the former in a Disney Plus TV series featuring Oscar Isaac, and the latter in a feature-length film starring Mahershala Ali, the series finally looks set to bring that corner of the comics to the big screen, and Mephisto could be instrumental to that process. Look, the MCU, much like the source material it's based on, encompasses a great many different genres within its walls. Whether it's political thrillers or sci-fi space operas, Marvel Studios understands that the secret to a long and successful franchise lies in the breadth of stories it's able to tell. Not everyone may be down for another cosmic odyssey involving the Eternals, for instance, but martial arts fans and those interested in horror may be intrigued by Shang-Chi and Blade respectively. Factor in Mephisto, whose reach stretches from hell all the way to Asgard and back to New York City, and you have the ideal foe for bringing all these different properties together under one roof. And just to hammer that point home further for just one extra second, one of the greatest Marvel stories of the last 3 decades, Roger Stern and Mike Mignola's Triumph and Torment, involved Doctor Strange teaming up with Doctor Doom to rescue the latter's mother from Mephisto's clutches. It's really good, and it would make the perfect movie. The Fantastic Four are already on their way to the MCU courtesy of director John Watts, and with them Doom is sure to follow, so already you have what could be the perfect third entry for a Doctor Strange film, as well as the perfect genre-busting crossover should the series follow the same pattern as previous MCU trilogies and get to that third film. Again, it's way too early to tell if Mephisto could be involved or not, but it would make a lot of sense and could bring all sorts of weird and wonderful opportunities to the MCU across a breadth of different films and genres. But what do you think about Mephisto being involved in the MCU? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to subscribe to What Culture so you don't miss any content going forward. I've been Ewan, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!